it got to the point where I remember sitting in a meeting with like 8 people, 5 full-time employees, 3 freelancers, and I started disassociating, which means I don't care when I start to disassociate.
Mhm.
And I realized I was the problem.
Mm.
And I went home and I started to sit and I journal every day, and I realized, and I like asked myself questions in my journal, like, what's happening? Why am I experiencing this again? That, I clearly, the source of the burnout was me, that I was experiencing almost like I say that's like, for me, burnout is a symptom of like an identity crisis.
Today's episode of Naked Beauty is made possible by my friends at Macy's. And I want to have an honest conversation with you all about what it means to be prepared for your summer. Summer is supposed to feel fun and easy, but there is nothing fun or easy about realizing that you have a pool party, a barbecue, a wedding, all back to back, weekend after weekend in a row, and you don't know what you're wearing. And I have been there before, scrolling, spiraling, panicking, adding item after item into your cart, never making it to checkout. And I actually had to have a talk with myself. Brooke, it doesn't have to be this way. Line up your perfect summer outfits, and this is where Macy's has come in to save the day. Macy's is the place to find everything you need for your summer wardrobe, like this gorgeous knit sweater I got from DKNY. I just picked this up at Macy's. I love the way it looks against my brown skin. If you are melanin rich, I would highly suggest adding some gorgeous yellow hues into your wardrobe. Macy's actually has a golden hour glow collection that is full of warm neutrals, gorgeous metallic accents, beautiful artisanal embroidery to just help you look like a glowing goddess this summer. Macy's has everything you need to walk into this summer feeling ready. That is not just a shopping tip, that is a self-care tip. Let's get back into today's episode. Hello. This is Brooke Devard, and you're listening to the Naked Beauty Podcast. And if you're with us here on YouTube, you are watching the Naked Beauty Podcast. And I am so excited to reintroduce to the show longtime friend of the pod,
Yes.
Madison Utendahl. So great to have you back. But first, I've got to get into your accolades. Madison Utendahl is a multi-hyphenate CMO, writer, and creative director. She's the founder of Utendahl Consulting, formerly Utendahl Creative. If you all will remember, they did the branding for all things Naked Beauty.
Yeah.
I was going to say just the fragrance, but like the logo that you see, the
Yes.
design, the podcast,
Strategy.
the everything.
Yeah.
One of the most brilliant projects I've had the pleasure to be at the forefront of. Like, your team
Sweet.
and you are just incredible. She is the voice behind Burnt on Substack, a Substack breaking down how we work and why we are all so burnt out, which is a topic we need to dive into. Madison is also a 2-time Webby Award winner, Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, and has been on founding teams of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, Refinery 29's 29 Rooms, and Museum of Ice Cream. Madison, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
My third or fourth time.
Third or fourth time.
Yeah. Very different reasons every time.
Every single time. Yeah. We got like the skincare and beauty focused conversation. Then we had a design conversation.
Yes, the branding one. Yeah. With Tori.
Yes. But now we're talking about burnout, which it feels like we are in this time. And as we're recording this for people listening, like Emma Greed's book has just come out, Start With Yourself. I feel like every app I open, people are having these conversations about career and how to get ahead and what does success look like to you. And parallel to that, you're having conversations about burnout and how to get off the hamster wheel.
Totally. I'm like, don't do it.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm so excited to have this conversation, because I do feel like there's been this influx of shame-based career content where it's like, if you want to be successful, you've got to do these things. And if you're not doing these things, that's probably why you're not successful.
Right.
There's just a lot to get into. But first, I have to go to the beginning. You know, with Naked Beauty, I always like to go back to childhood.
Yes.
You are a third-generation New Yorker.
Yes.
Do you feel like growing up in New York City influenced the way that you work, the way that you understand things, the way that you are?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my dad always used to say, which I think I have mixed feelings about, but it's important. If you're having a bad day, like, get on the subway. He's like, there's like many people on the subway having a worse day than you.
Yes.
Just like put yourself in and give yourself perspective. Which can be a very like problematic boomer thing to say at the same time. But I do think New York taught me that there's a certain grit and hustle required to make it in that city, because it's such a hard place to live. You have to really want it.
Yes.
And that connection between like the hustle and grind and wanting something has to go hand in hand if you're going to be willing to be there and do it.
So true.
And I've left New York, I've lived other places, and I realized that like I love New York. New York makes me so happy, and I'm also committed to the grit and hustle that's required to live there.
Yes.
So I think New York is constantly reminding me of that, and just like the perspective at all times of like walking around and seeing people from all over the world and the culture, like it is
the best.
the best.
It's the best.
It's the greatest influence.
I was just in New York for a single day, and I brought my luggage to the hotel, and I said, I'm just going to walk around. I don't have anywhere to go. No stores are open. It was 6 o'clock. I was like, I'm just going to walk around and look at people and just feel free.
Yeah. Totally.
Who knows what I'll stumble into?
Totally. And also just like stumble into, you see some crazy shit as well.
Yes, but I love it.
Totally. Yeah.
Did you feel beautiful growing up in New York?
That's a great question. No, I think I was a late bloomer in my beauty. So I was the tallest person in my class until I was
slay. Because I feel like we talked about how it's kind of a good thing to not be the most beautiful, coolest, most popular girl while you're still in high school.
Yeah, and I think my parents are both like, my mom always used to say, Madison, you don't want to be the most beautiful girl in middle school. She was just like, you don't want to peak at 12, honey. And I didn't know what she meant.
That's so true, though.
But she would say things like that to me and my sister, because we would feel like we were both extremely tall for our grades, taller than all the boys. And we went to a school that was majoritively white, and we felt very awkward. I mean, I will give my parents a lot of credit in that, like, our life outside of school was very Black.
Yes.
So we had this constant contrast, which I think was like necessary for me to be the person I am today. But my sense of beauty and who I was didn't really come into play probably until I was in high school, until I left. I went to boarding school in Rome for a semester. And that is really where I was like, oh, like the way it's different.
Well, but also the way the Italians feel about Black women, it's also a little bit fetishistic.
Totally.
It's but you do realize that Black beauty is put on this pedestal, really.
Yeah, I think, I wasn't at 16, and also this is like the era, right? We're talking like 2008 and 9. I don't think I was fully aware of the fetishizing when I was in Rome. I was more aware of the fact that like I was feeling like I was being seen.
Yes, you were getting attention.
I was getting attention. I felt like, wow, like I'm not like sort of blending in. I don't need to hide in any way. And I felt that way in many ways throughout my high school experience and middle school experience. But coming back to New York in high school and college really changed that for me. But look, I think the reality is, to your point, like, I mean, it's so cliche and corny, but the discourse around like loving yourself, I don't think was popularized when we were young.
Absolutely not. It was conform to fit this very narrow beauty ideal.
Very narrow beauty ideal. And so one thing that I think about a lot is that if that had been the discourse, my entrance into feeling beautiful probably would have come much earlier.
Yes.
And if I'm fortunate enough to have a daughter, like I really think a lot about how like that is going to be something I encourage and really enforce her to believe and think in a way that I don't really remember having that level of like intentional consciousness put in front of me of like, you should look at yourself and admire yourself and love yourself for who you are. That came later.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. But I mean, you're so gorgeous.
Oh, please.
No, but I'm saying now you know. Now, if you didn't know when you were younger, now you know. Well, you have shared that you were an anxious child.
Yes.
How did that show up in your approach to school, in your approach to extracurriculars?
Yeah. I was somebody who always felt different. I never felt like I really fit in. And a lot of it was I had like a lot of ambition at a young age. I didn't really believe when my teachers told me like, this is what you could do. I always felt like I could do more.
Yes, I felt the same way.
Yeah. And my dad did a really good job at encouraging that as well. Like, really reminding me over and over again. Like, he'd be like, you're a Utendahl, like you're made different. He would say.
I love it. Wait, and by the way, last night I was like, when can I have your dad on the pod? Because obsessed with him.
Bro.
The biggest personality, but your dad's career background, briefly.
My dad's career background. My dad grew up in Bayside, Queens in low-income housing, played basketball. Basketball got him out of his situation. And was very much raised by the family next door to him, the Watkins family, we're still very close with, who took them in as their 7th child.
Wow. And
really instilled in him the value of education, the value of self-worth, the value of putting in the time. And he eventually was graduated from college. And he says he took out all the loans available to him to put himself through business school, and has since then been an investment banker and built an amazing life for himself that has provided an incredible life for my siblings and I that,
Yes.
is a 1 in a million opportunity and experience.
Yeah. I mean, investment banking requires so much grit and
Mm-hmm.
so much hustle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not surprising that he was always telling you and your siblings, like, you can really do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, look, I think that, and this is like a conversation I have with my dad often, which is that there is a narrative that it is required as an investment banker to be successful, or I think anyone who works in finance, and it's you have to put in the time, put in the hours, be willing to sacrifice yourself, your family, your life in many ways,
Your mental health.
your mental health, for these enormous rewards, right? Which is like a huge financial outcome that's going to be able to put your kids through college and give you the lifestyle that you've always dreamed of. And so I think when we talk about like grit and grind and hustle, and something my dad and I have gotten into debate about is that works for that specific industry. And I would probably argue that it also exists in like law or anything that allows you to have this enormous financial outcome, right? Is that you can justify mentally this overtime and grind because you're going to be able to live a lifestyle that is unprecedented.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily apply. It did not apply for me, which is what triggered my burnout.
To the junior brand managers being
to
asked
the
to work.
marketing creative world.
Being asked to work 14-hour days.
It's like, in the end, there was no amount of time I could put into my job and my career that would give me the financial reward that it would if I had been an investment banker.
Right.
And now I'm not here to only say that like money is the only value,
Mm-hmm.
but I also am not wired to market a business that's not my own and feel emotionally fulfilled.
Yes.
Right? Like the things that have become the most rewarding for me are the things that I have created myself for myself, selfishly or not. But this idea of putting in overtime, 15-hour days, 7 days a week for a business that I'm not going to see any upside in led to my burnout. At least that was my first sort of experience with burnout. So my dad sort of, don't quit, grind. I actually think it's sound advice if you want to be a lawyer or a doctor or an investment banker, but it's not the advice I would give my children or I give people now around, grit and grind doesn't mean self-sacrifice in the way that I think we perpetuate.
Yes.
It can mean that at times, and I think you have to practice sequence, and we don't talk about sequencing enough in career, but it doesn't necessarily.
I want to pause there. What do you mean by practicing sequence?
There's this narrative that exists is that you can't have it all. And there's a narrative that exists that if you are to have it all has to happen at once. And that's where that grind has to come in. And I really am a big believer in sequencing, which is that you can have it all, but are you willing to look at your life in totality and look at everything that you're doing in sequence? So maybe you want to be a mother and you want to be a hands-on mom. Great. That doesn't mean you cannot have a career. It means you have to be more strategic about the timing and the sequencing that you choose to be a mother and choose to have your career, and be mindful that, like, unfortunately in society, you can't take 10 years off. Are you willing to, again, practice sequence, have to come back to work in order to achieve the career that you're looking for?
Yes.
So I caution this pressure that we put on ourselves about having to do it all. And having to do it all at once, or that you can have one or the other. I more so look at it as, are you willing to make the sacrifice in practicing sequencing and being really thoughtful and strategic about when you have each thing?
I see. Do you still identify as anxious today?
No.
Interesting.
At this point I have so many, I'm like,
We're going to get into the coping mechanisms.
I can get pretty out there.
You're healed.
I am still someone though, who is, I'm still working on the boundaries of being an empath. And I think my anxiety is often triggered by feeling so deeply.
Yes, I am also an empath, and it's difficult.
It's difficult. And the expression that like feeling so deeply is a blessing and a curse has always resonated with me so much, because I do believe that.
Yes.
And my anxiety, when I do experience anxiety, is often related to feeling so deeply towards something or someone and struggling to sort of create a sense of space and distance between that person or that thing.
Yes.
Emotionally.
Yes. In terms of how being an empath manifests in a positive way, I have this new theory that because I'm very empathic, I'm able to enjoy art more. Like the
Mm.
way, like when I take in a film,
Yes.
I really like,
Oh yeah. I
you
feel
know,
you.
it's like, oh,
Totally.
like I feel
Yeah.
this, like great art,
Yes.
mediocre art, but great art, I feel like is able to move me so much more
Yes.
because of this like
Yes.
empathy that I have.
Yes.
So you've now come to this point where you've developed ways to self-soothe,
Mm-hmm.
you have coping mechanisms, you have strategies, but that first experience, that burnout
Yeah.
that you had,
Mm-hmm.
take me back there. What did it feel like? When did
Woo!
it happen?
Yeah. Oh my
Deep breath.
God. You know, I don't think I even entered the workplace not being burned out. I think that going to the high school that I went to, you know, it's interesting. Going to Brown as an undergrad was like vacation between high school and work.
Yeah.
Going to a prep school that, I mean, we were overworked when I was in high school.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
I can't even,
I had less work my freshman year at Stanford than I had starting 10th grade at Spence.
100%.
Yeah.
Truly. I mean, I would be doing my homework until like 8 p.m.
Oh, of course. Not to mention all of your extracurricular
Yeah.
activities,
It's like
track and
nuts.
swimming and dance and music.
Nuts.
Yeah.
So Packer was really tough, really rigorous. Went to Brown for undergrad. Went on vacation at Brown, it seems like. Just 4 years of vacation.
At only one of the best schools in the country. But
Totally,
yeah.
but like the
Easy.
way
Yeah.
that the work ethic that I had learned in high school, really, where I will give my high school credit, like totally prepared me for college.
Yes.
I was cruising
Yes.
in college. Graduated from college, entered the workplace, and it's like I had gone right back to being in high school in terms of like needing to be an overachiever.
Yes.
So I think I actually like literally leapt into the workplace burnt out.
Day one, I'm burnt out.
Day one.
But you, probably like me, were probably like a mostly straight A student.
Yes.
And I can remember like I got like a B. Yeah, I got a B, a solid B, not B plus on something. And I had a breakdown. Like
In
I was
high school or college?
in college because it was the first time it had happened.
In college, I took Brown's pass fail.
Lovely.
I was
so used to getting A's though that to see that B felt like a personal affront.
Yeah,
like I felt
yeah.
it was like, oh my God, like this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
Oh, interesting. I think because I was on vacation in college, I did not care. When I got to Brown and started going on vacation, I realized that I didn't have to work as hard as I did in high school in order to be, you know, a good student.
Mhm.
And I decided I didn't want to be a great student when I was in college. I wanted to just be a good student. I wanted
Yes.
to like enjoy my life.
Yes.
So I was very comfortable with the B's.
Smart. By the way, for people listening that are in college, no one will ever ask to see your transcript.
Ever. Brown taught me a lot that like you have to be able to stretch your limits and explore and try new things in order to move closer to what feels like fulfillment of your ambition.
Mhm.
So when I graduated from college and went to the workplace, I quickly learned that, that like exploratory, like let me figure it out and try new things wasn't going to work anymore. So it's like my brain almost like clicked back into being an overachiever in high school.
Mhm.
And when I started my career, I mean, I just didn't know how not to do things 100%.
Yes.
And I also had my greatest ambition and I just wanted to move out of my dad's house so badly. I was like, I can't. He would literally be like, where are you going? I'd be like, I'm 22 years old. Let me live my life. Like it was just a constant.
Yes. You're like, I got to pay rent.
I got to pay rent. I got to be able to make money to be able to move out. So I worked really hard. And I also was, I had the opportunity to work on Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. It was my real first job out of school. And, you know, it was 12 to 14-hour days. And we didn't know what we were doing. John was a phenomenal boss. He taught me a lot about really being open to experimentation in the sense that like his biggest goal was to make something really good and make something that changed the world, that we needed to be willing to try something and experience it.
I love that.
In order to make it happen. But the reality was that I was starting out in my career, so I wasn't in a position to like do a lot of the experimentation.
Yeah.
Right. So my desire to like be the best was truly so I could get promoted, so I could be in the rooms where I could experiment.
Yes.
Right. But that first job out of school is not really a fun one. It's a one that requires like you're told this is what you're doing and you got to do it.
Yes.
But I think people forget that like after you do that, after you that first job, that's how you get into the space of experimentation.
Yes.
You can't go from
day one, you're like throwing out ideas.
Yeah, that's not how it went.
Yeah.
And so I chose to look at my first job as an opportunity to be a sponge. And I would just always say, what can I learn?
That's smart.
What rooms can I just be a wallflower in and listen?
Did you experience burnout at this first job?
Oh my God, beyond.
And so, because I want people listening to understand when you are experiencing burnout, how does it show up in your body?
Yeah.
How do you know that you are burnt out? Because there's being tired, there's being exhausted, and you can be, tired multiple days in a row. That doesn't mean you're burnt out.
I mean, I think there's two things, which is that we underestimate like as human beings, the impact of physical work or just working for that amount of time a day is taxing on any human.
Mm-hmm.
Being paid on a 12-hour day, which is standard in Hollywood entertainment, right? It's what most people in the production side are paid on, is extremely hard.
Yeah.
It is when I say it's the hardest physical job I've ever had, to be able to sustain those hours, the 12 to 14 hours a day, is brutal.
Yes.
And it took an enormous toll on my body.
Mm.
My chronic fatigue was debilitating. I was constantly basically experiencing like caffeine overdoses, essentially, which is like these migraines and headaches as I was like, had coffee in my veins, essentially,
Yes.
in order to sustain myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized I was becoming very forgetful. I was becoming highly irritable because I wasn't sleeping. And at the time, there was no sort of diagnosis of burnout, right? It was sort of like, this is what happens, buckle up and stick with it, kid.
True. Yes.
And so I didn't recognize I was severely burned out until I left that job and went to Refinery 29, which is where the first time I had a healthy work-life balance that I had experienced burnout so severely when I was at HBO.
I love that you had such a great positive experience at Refinery 29.
To this day, the best job I've ever had.
Oh my gosh.
I
Come back, work with us.
Imagine.
Let me live recruit. Listen,
Yes.
It could happen.
I will say that I attribute the type of boss that I am and my time at Refinery exclusively to Piera.
Piera, yes.
She just had she was an incredible listener.
It's very important.
Incredibly important. And she listened to you no matter where you were on the totem pole of if you were an intern to an assistant to being on the C-suite with her. But she also really wanted me to enjoy my life. And she would encourage me to like go out and see shows and like leave the office and like hang out with my friends and go to new restaurants.
Yes.
And she believed that those things influenced the
work. It absolutely does. I mean, I get so excited for my team. I was like, they're all on the ground at Coachella enjoying. I'm like, I definitely don't need to be there. You guys live your best lives. And they're going to premieres and they're going on brand trips. And I'm like, this is the fun part of working in this industry.
Yeah.
And do it.
Do it.
Every time you ask me, it's going to be a yes. As long as you're keeping, you're doing your other work. But like, do it.
Do it. And Piera was the first person that, taught me that. She used to have this meeting called the Creative Reference Share.
Yeah.
And everyone came to the table and presented something that had inspired them.
Oh, okay.
It didn't matter what it was. It could be a dish that they ate at a restaurant, an architecture, article they read in AD. It could have been a museum exhibit they saw in their hometown in frickin' Arkansas or wherever. Do you know what I mean?
No, it
didn't matter.
Yes, it's so important to foster that in a work environment.
And she opened my world on what it meant to be a good boss, to have happy employees, to not be burned out. And so here I was experiencing two extremes. And I do also really want to acknowledge my time at HBO, despite how exhausting it was and sort of was the first experience with burnout, taught me, I think besides working for Piera, the second most valuable thing in my career, which was that you have to have the courage to pivot.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 episodes into season 1 of Last Week Tonight, if you go back and watch season 1, the show changes. So it's a completely different show after 3 episodes of the first season. I remember people being like, this is crazy. We can't do this. And he's like, why?
Exactly.
Why can't we pivot?
Right.
What are we, what's the goal here? The goal is to make something that's going to change the world and change people's lives and open them up to recognize what is happening in this global economy that we're in. We need to pivot. And so that pivot, which became his 12-minute segments,
is the thing that the show's famous for today.
He has 13 Emmys.
You changed your business. You were like, I'm not going to do social media anymore.
Yes. And
I'm going to do design.
And what he really also taught me was that, are you willing if you make this change, be willing to die for this change. And be willing to accept the consequences if this change does not lead to the results you want, but that you are proud of it.
I've seen you do it firsthand.
Yeah,
I've seen you just like decide like, okay, we were doing this before, now we're going to do this.
And I ask myself, am I willing to die on this hill?
Right.
And if I am not willing to die on the hill, then I'm not going to make the change.
Yes. Well, let's talk about your decision to no longer have employees.
Oh yeah, that's been a big one. I mean,
we're jump skipping past a few work experiences, but I feel like I want to get to it because I think as entrepreneurs, there's the business and driving the business forward. There's people management. There's a lot that goes into running your own company, and people management is a huge part of it.
Enormous. So flash forward, worked at Museum of Ice Cream for a while, then started my creative agency, and you see, and I mean, we were at the top of the world, right?
Yes.
We built brands for Halsey, Maria Shriver, Lena Dunham, La Roche, anyone and everyone. I built 37 brands, which is insane.
Incredible.
And I realized in winter of 24 that I was burnt out again. And I had no one else to blame this time. I had no boss. I had no investors. I had no network. I had no co-founders. How did I end up in the same position again?
Right. Because it's different when you're burnt out working for someone, because it's like you're going upwards, like this is the reason why I'm burnt out. If you're burnt out and you work for yourself, then you have to really do some investigation as to why.
Oh, totally. And I set the rules, baby. I was like, take vacation, everybody. You don't want to work at Gen Z. I have the best compliment I've ever received is one of my former Gen Z employees say that I'm the most Gen Z boss she's ever had. I was like, as a millennial, that is the most flat. I'm like, I am so flattered. But I really was like, doing all these things in many ways to prevent my burnout, right? If when the team was like, we don't, I didn't want to take calls before 10 a.m. on a Monday either. So like we had all these rules that were to prevent, I called them burnout prevention policies.
I want to pause there. The no calls before 10 a.m.
Yes.
I am so respectful to people's different working styles. But I do think it is important to also have some like reality around what are expected ways of engaging with work. So like when you come in, when you are young and you come into an organization and you say like, I don't want to take a meeting or a call before 10 a.m.
Go work for yourself.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for saying it, because I do think that there are some expectations that are unrealistic.
You don't get to make those expectations working for someone else.
Yes.
That like, if you have a boss like me who's like, I'm not taking a call at 7 a.m. Pacific time. I will if it's like, this is where I'm also like, I say to people, you have to be willing to accommodate. Remember, there's another human on the other end of this. I've had a client based in Hong Kong, and I didn't want to take meetings at 9 p.m. They didn't want to take meetings at 9 p.m. It's a 12-hour difference. So what did we do? That meant sometimes I took meetings at 9 p.m. Sometimes they took meetings at 9 p.m. It sucks. No one wants to do it. But I couldn't be the person who was like, oh, I'm never taking that.
Yes.
It's not fair.
Right.
So this person at times, if you are the Pacific Coast person and your team's in London and New York, and you're the only person who is on the West Coast, and the call's at 10 a.m., you're getting up at 7 a.m.
Sometimes you got to do the 7 a.m. call. I had one this morning. Yep.
But if you really don't want to, you can't make that. I think you have to go and work for yourself. And I do think that's a totally reasonable and acceptable thing to do in today's age, right?
Yes.
So that's the beauty, is that that's not something that you could do a couple years ago. You can absolutely do it now. Anyways, flash forward. It's January 2024. And I feel myself in team meetings disassociating, which is one of the biggest signs for me of burnout, where I'm just like, I'm going to age myself, but it's like Bueller. Like everyone is talking and I'm like, these are all people I love. I hired every single person there. I'm paying all these people.
Yes.
And I am starting to notice I'm experiencing my burnout symptoms. And for me, burnout expresses itself in like debilitating fatigue. That is just the way
like
that
you can't sleep enough to feel rested.
Can't sleep enough. I thought I had mono. I mean, like I was debilitating fatigue, brain fog, like really severe brain fog. And then something that's very specific to me, but I've heard it from other people, is like truly like my speech starts to change when I'm severely burned out. Like my husband says, it sounds like it's like English is my second language.
I'm sorry to laugh, but that's just such a like interesting. So like, what does that mean?
Like, I'll just like stumble on words, or
you
like
can't find your words.
I can't find my words. I like say I use like it literally. Like I sometimes will be like, is English my first language? I'm severely burned out.
Yes.
So I found myself in
Any physical symptoms, just in terms of like your skin, your hair, your body?
I sometimes will get really severe stomach issues, more so when I was younger than I do now, but
Yeah.
I kept getting pancreatitis,
gosh.
which is product of extreme stress in a young person's body. Um, and I would get like really severe like cystic pimples. Not all over, but like hormonally around my like chin.
Mm-hmm.
So this time around, I was experiencing more so the brain fog, the extreme fatigue, and the like ESL speech. And I started to really look at myself in the mirror and say, wait a minute, like, Madison, you're starting to experience these symptoms again. And my first response was to blame certain clients. I was like, well, that person's kind of a jerk and she's asking too much. And then I started to realize that's not really true. And it got to the point where I remember sitting in a meeting with like 8 people, 5 full-time employees, 3 freelancers. And I started disassociating, which means I don't care when I start to disassociate.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I was the problem. And I went home and I started to sit and I journal every day. And I realized, and I like asked myself questions in my journal, like, what's happening? Why am I experiencing this again? That, you know, I clearly, the source of the burnout was me, that I was experiencing almost like, I say that's like, for me, burnout is a symptom of like an identity crisis. It's when I reach the place in my job or my career where I'm like, I don't know who I am without doing this, but this is not making me happy. So who am I? And then the burnout starts to kick in because it's almost like a survival it's like fear, right? It's like, what do I do? Well, what am I supposed to do now? I'm like so in deep with this business. And so I denied it and I denied it and I denied it. And then in about May of 2024, I realized I was the problem. And I got to a place, which I've actually never really talked about this on camera, but a large investment firm reached out and they were actually interested in putting in a sizable investment into Utendahl Creative, to grow Utendahl Creative to sort of be the next like Red Antler. And we're talking like a multi-million-dollar deal. And Tori, who was a partner of the business, we flew out to LA. Like we went to like, we had the term sheet and everything. And I remember the CEO of this investment firm, who has since become like a mentor and a very dear friend, basically looked at me and was like, are you ready for this? Like, this is going to be a rocket ship. You're going to have hundreds of employees. And
you were like, this is my
like,
worst nightmare.
Employees. Oh my gosh. He was like, you're going to have hundreds of employees. You know, we're looking at like a 10x this, da, da, da. And I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to do this. And I was like, I don't want hundreds of employees.
Right. It's like you're girl bossing too close to the sun.
God. And I went home and I sent the term sheet to my dad, who was like, are you sure you want to do this? This is like, you're locking yourself in. Like, you're not getting out of this in 2-3 years. You're in this for like 6 to 10 years with these people. He's like, I don't think this is a good deal. And I said to myself, it was not a good deal either. But then I realized, well, then what am I going to do now? Am I just going to keep doing this? Am I going to just grow this business organically? I mean, we're doing well. We're taking home millions of dollars a year. Or do I not want to do this at all? And when I said to myself and asked myself, do I want to do this at all? I realized the answer was no.
Wow.
And then became like really one of the biggest chapters and journeys of my life, which was like, you know, I think it's really easy to blame other people and things and justify for yourself mentally. It's always when it's like when you have a bad boss and a terrible company, or the places you work has like not a lot of budget. There's so many reasons and excuses you can give yourself as to why you leave and why it didn't work out. It's really humiliating and humbling to be like, oh, I just don't want to do this. And that's enough of a reason.
But I think we're seeing it more. I can think of several, specifically Black founders that have said, I'm actually just going to stop the business.
Yeah.
I'm going to walk away from it.
I'm going to walk away from it. And I'm also super honest with people. Like, I didn't just wake up one day and say, everybody, today is your last day.
You're right.
I hired a coach.
Yeah.
To literally her one job that she did fantastic. Her name is Jeanette Jordan. I reached out to a friend of mine. I was like, I want a Black female business coach who can help me close my business. He's like, I got the woman for you. And she did. Fantastic. I hired Jeanette, who was my mindset coach, to help me grasp all of these societal hurdles that I had like put onto myself and pressure of like why I shouldn't do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I hired an HR consultant to help me ethically, consciously, thoughtfully close this business and let go of everybody in a way that I know would be heartbreaking, because I had built something pretty fantastic and no one wanted to leave.
Mm.
And I think that's the other mistake people make, is that they forget that there's a human side of not everyone, it's your experience as a founder, but there are, if you have people like, I had this amazing women working for me. They didn't want me to close this business.
Yes.
And I also knew I was not somebody who really had the understanding of what it really meant to do that in a way that was thoughtful. So I hired 2 people, and over the course of from May until September, we created a really detailed plan of how I would inform the team, what I would do to take care of myself. We worked on financial packages to give people. We worked on Emma Leeds, my HR consultant that I worked with. We had like a 30-page document of emails ready to go for individual clients and people of how I was going to communicate that I was making this life decision.
Yes.
Yes. And so when I did it,
you were prepared to do it.
I was prepared.
Yes.
Versus you hear these stories and it's like someone sends an email. It's like, today's your last day. And you're like, you didn't have to do that, motherfucker. You could have.
Right. Horrifying. But there's so much to unpack in what you're saying. I think one of the things that we learn is that our success in life is so tied to career performance.
Yes.
Our worth as a person is often tied to career performance. And I think that when you grow up in a system where it's like you get the gold star, you get the A, you get into the great college, you get the prestige job, you get the Webby Award, you're on the Forbes 30 under 30. It's like, what does your ideal life look like independent of external accolades?
Right.
How did you answer that for yourself? What did success, you take all of that away, what did success look like to you?
Like very hollow and shallow, and it felt extremely unfulfilling.
What did the perfect picture of success look like to you then, to ask the question a different way? How did you start to realize this isn't the life I want to live, but this is?
Yes. 2 things. Client services is a very, very hard business.
Yes.
You are, even if you are independent and a freelancer or you're on your own, especially when you have an agency, and I think like societally, like agencies have historically really taken advantage of a lot of clients. And there's a lot of predatory agency behavior out there, right? Where clients, granted, I understand the agency founder needs to make money, but there's a lot of like people signing huge contracts with agencies and like their intern is doing half the work, right?
Yeah.
So what that creates is a dynamic as an agency founder of just like constantly needing to be on and like reassuring people that like you're involved and that the best people on your company are like on hand. So the services industry is just hard.
Yes.
And I think
so you knew you wanted to not be in the services industry
as an agency.
I
think agencies I find that now that I'm independent, but I'm a CMO and I'm operating as an individual, I have way more trust with my clients. I do not feel the same sort of like, someone breathing down my neck and like, are making sure that like people are actually working. I don't feel that at all anymore. And I think that's because of the nature of the agencies, and especially because you don't really need agencies in the same way anymore, frankly.
Yes. Yeah.
But I realized like what I had determined to be success previously was all the accolades, which I had achieved, all the press, which I had achieved. And in the end, that felt extremely unfulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that I was no longer a creative. I felt like I was an operator. I spent my days like clacking away, sending emails. And I was like, wait, I'm a writer. I am an artist. Like, what happened to that? That's
being
gone.
on email all day is the number one way to kill your creativity.
Literally. I don't believe I was born to clack. I know that I had way more to give. And I felt that burning sensation inside of me that like my creativity was being dimmed and that therefore I was not successful.
So ideal life, you knew you wanted to not be in the agency business. You knew you wanted to be creative. Was there anything else that came to you as you thought about what you wanted your ideal life to be? Because I want people listening to really you have very unique experience that probably people listen, like maybe 0.1% of people listening are like, yes, I've been in this exact position. But for most of us, it's like, we know we're burnt out. We know we're not happy. But then what's that next step of what does my ideal life actually look like?
So I do believe that some people, very few people will listen to this story and be like, I know what it's like to like achieve the things that I've achieved at my age and the different businesses. I don't, that's not the expectation, but I do believe, and I do believe that you're going to have people listening to this whose stomach will drop and whose heart will start beating a little bit more and their hands may start sweating when they hear that they know they're meant to do more than clack on Slack and be on Teams all day.
Yes.
Right? Like that is the reality, especially if you are a creative, especially if when I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor, I wanted to sing, I wanted to dance. Like I've always been, and I've always been somebody who had artistic dreams. And I found myself, I believe, in a very like artistic adjacent safe industry, which is marketing. And there's millions of people who can listen to this and know what that's like
yeah.
to take that like creative adjacent safer
Absolutely.
role when deep down they wanted to be that artist.
Of course.
And I realized that in order for me to, and let's also be real. Like I also like nice things. I want to live a good life. So there's not like no one, there's part of me that also came to that reality. Being an independent contractor now and an interim CMO and writing my Substack gives me the space to be able to be an artist in ways that I've never been able to before.
Yes.
I still have to be a CMO to pay my bills, right?
Yes.
Like I'm still translating these skills that I gained in my career in this very specific way. And I've achieved a lot of success at a young age. But the space that I now have to be able to write my Substack, to even be able to sit here with you, I could not do that. When I had 10 employees. I just couldn't do it.
You wouldn't have the time. Well, I'm such a huge advocate for people having something completely outside of their work that is like their creative baby that they nurture. And that's what I started in 2016 with Naked Beauty and what I'm still doing now throughout all of the jobs that I've had. And my mom is, because sometimes I'm like, it's so like, I quite literally have like 3 full-time jobs.
Yes, you do.
I've got my job.
Capacity.
I'm at capacity. And I'll talk to my mom about it, and she's like, but you have to realize that Naked Beauty is the thing that fuels you.
Yes.
It keeps you creatively engaged, and it's the thing that you own end to end. There's no one that's like telling you what to do.
President, man.
Yes, she's always got the answers, but there is so much value in having your own thing, and that's why I think Substack has just become this like revolutionary platform because
it's an amazing place.
It's an amazing place, and Burnt, and I want to hear about starting Burnt and why it was important for you to start Burnt. But we have to get into your non-Western approach to healing.
Yes.
Once you did realize that you were burnt out, and also like some ketamine therapy that you did. There's a lot in your healing journey.
There's a lot there. I think there's another layer here though, which is as a Black woman, I feel that I was sort of conditioned structurally and societally to have to do the most and be the best. And I really got to a point in my life journey, which is that like giving myself the opportunity to not have to do that at all times.
Yes, because you and I grew up hearing from our parents, you've got to work twice as hard, right? See, that becomes ingrained in you that Black excellence looks like constantly sacrificing your mental health, your physical health, your emotional well-being to succeed.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the fact like our parents don't believe in burnout.
No, they don't.
It's like, what do you mean burnt out?
My dad says he's never really been exposed to it. I'm like, okay.
But I do think that our generation does have different visions of what success looks like. And if you're achieving all of the things and making all the money, but you aren't happy day to day, and you don't have time for yourself, it's like, what's it all for?
What's it all for? And I think one of the biggest plagues for our generation and younger is that there's a unwillingness to be honest with themselves about like what you're willing to sacrifice and the cost that you're willing to make, right? The reality is that, could I become a full-time writer and try to go out and be an actor? Yeah, I could do that. I can't support myself that way. So I have to say to myself, I'm going to still be a CMO. I have to pay my bills, but I'm only going to be a CMO. And again, because I've reached this place in my career, and as I hope everyone listening, like it did not happen overnight. I didn't wake up one day and was like, I'm a CMO of True Food Kitchen. Like this took years to get here. You know what I mean? But I'm privileged and grateful enough to be in this point in my career where I'm willing to say, this is the amount of time I'm going to allocate that I have to allocate in order to pay my bills and live my life. And I take care of my grandmother. There are a lot of things I work for. And then save time, precious time that I had sacrificed previously for clients and clacking.
Yes.
To write.
Yes. Beautiful.
And that has been that has been the greatest achievement for myself professionally, frankly, over 30 under 30, over my Webbies, over anything, is that I can now honestly say that I know deep down what fulfills me and the balance that I have to strike. And I don't always get it right. I don't really believe we were just talking about this, but like this whole idea of like I've healed my burnout is also, I think, complete bullshit. I'm like, this burnout's right here, baby. I'm like in a constant like,
It could come back at any time.
oh no, we are dancing. Me and
Yes.
burnout we are in a constant dance. It's like I said to my therapist, it's like a little devil that sits on my shoulder. And if I'm not hyper aware that it is right there, waiting for me, waiting for me to slack and just let it back in, it will.
Yes.
And that's where my like protection of routine and habits is super important, because this idea that I've like recovered from my burnout and it's totally gone is like it's complete bullshit. And when people talk about that, I'm like, you're really setting people up to fail, because it's the same narrative of people being like, I've achieved happiness. You didn't achieve happiness. You're experiencing happiness right now. Yeah. Happiness is an ongoing state. Joy is an ongoing state. It's the work of our lives.
Yes.
And we can't just say we've achieved it. Just like I can't just say burnout is gone.
Right. Well, you are very good about your habits, and I feel like you've got like the best wellness routine. But I want to hear, one, about your healing journey and some of the things that you explored to feel healed, and then two, how you set yourself up for success today in terms of the habits that you abide by daily, weekly.
Sure. I'll say something pretty woo-woo, but I think a lot of people will get it. There's a book that I read called It Didn't Start With You. And it's about intergenerational trauma.
Okay.
And I've always said, and my dad has said, I've been saying this for a long time, that a lot of my anxieties didn't feel like my own. And I felt that since I was a kid. And I come from a lineage of women who've been put through hell, frankly. Like my grandmother, my great grandmother, like there's a lot of women in my bloodline who lived really, really, really tough lives. And I feel honored, frankly, to have done a lot of this work, because I feel like I healed. I'm in the process of healing traumas that are in literally my DNA for like hundreds of years. But I say that because I do believe that I've entered this world with a certain susceptibility. I think my empathy, my the ability I have to burn out and, anxiety, I think all of that is frankly like I was born that way in many ways. And so it requires like a deeper level of consciousness of healing in order to overcome it.
Yes. I mean, I think about all of us that have slavery in our DNA, where our people were quite literally forced to work from sunup to sundown and survive. How does that impact us over time? I mean,
enormously.
I
mean, so this book, It Didn't Start With You, and there's another one called The Body Keeps Score, basically talks about prolonged trauma as one of the only things that really changes your DNA. And there's a lot of studies that showcase how children of descendants of slaves, descendants of people who were in the Holocaust, like descendants of any sort of marginalized group that were under prolonged oppression, have higher levels of anxiety, depression, and trauma. And how they've done all these studies where people who've like really had beautiful lives, they didn't have any sort of sexual, emotional, physical assault in their childhoods, can still become like very anxious adults. And so there's a lot of theories and belief systems that genetically it's because they have like inherited the trauma of generations in their past that they're basically like expressing in their anxieties. And I feel that in many ways. I feel incredibly privileged in having escaped a lot of those things or not experienced those things as a woman. And that feels like a rare thing in this world, right?
True.
But I still had like just such debilitating anxiety for so long. And my ability to burn out over and over again, I realized was like there was a self-worth issue here. There was an identity issue. There was a trauma healing that needed to be done. And then I couldn't just like quit the job and close the company and say like, fuck you to my clients and just think I was going to be a healed person. You know what I mean?
Right. You have to do real work.
And so I did. And it's ongoing. Again, it's ongoing. I say this because there's a lot of like rhetoric in the wellness and burnout healing world where it's like you do these one things and you come out like healed. And done.
Yes.
And I don't believe that.
Right.
In learning all of these things and reading these books and doing this work, I realized I had to go to another level. And so I did two things that I feel like have been the most impactful. So the way I look at it is like, what are my daily habits? And then like, what are the like life chapter healing processes that have changed my life? I did a program called Hoffman, which a lot of people talk about Hoffman, and it's not a cult.
People think it's a cult.
People who've done it know that it's not a cult because it's not something you want to go back to.
Right. It's
so hard. I'm
yes.
like, it's cults, in my opinion. When I think of cults, it's like an ongoing, like,
right. No, it's definitely not a cult.
It's not a cult. I do not want to go back.
But you know what I think people say it's a cult because it's like this thing that kind of people like whisper about, and it's in certain like celebrity and it's like, oh, they did Hoffman. It's like it's kind of like talked about in like hushed tones,
totally.
And it's very like if you know, you know. And doesn't someone have to like refer you in?
No, you can apply. I think
you have to apply. There's some level of it's not easy to penetrate.
Totally.
Yes.
It is it's the most important thing I've ever done.
Wow. How would you describe Hoffman to someone who doesn't know anything about it?
Hoffman is a 9-day retreat, 7 days in a center, 2 days on your own, without your phone, 12 hours a day, basically forcing you to understand and unpack your patterns. And patterns are inherited from mother or father, and they really dominate a lot of our lives. So for some of my patterns was control, rumination, like very competitive. These are things that have held me back and harmed my life. And you learn in Hoffman that a lot of these patterns are adopted out of like unhealed pain. And so you become a control freak as a child when you don't feel safe. You adopt rumination as a means to like not think about how you're actually feeling. And you spend an excruciating amount of time. And I won't go into the details of it because I do think it's like, there's no point. It's different for everyone. It's brutal. That's where I'm like.
I've heard that you have to scream at some point. And for me, that's when I was like, I can't do this.
Well, that's probably something that they would have to.
I have to unpack why. Thought of just like being in a room and just like screaming at the top of my lungs for some reason, like can't do it.
Well, that's a pattern that they would have you look into. I mean, look, it's just changed me.
Yeah.
In the best way. Like I'm so grateful for that work. Like I can't even really describe it, but you come out a different human being.
Different person.
And you also come out with a different perspective on your life and your parents and your childhood. And it just makes you a better human.
Wow.
Yeah. So I did Hoffman. And I also will just say it's extremely hard. Like I've never done anything harder. It is brutal. I thought I wanted day 4. I was like, I'm good. I almost left. I was like, what the heck did I sign up for? But I'm glad I didn't leave. I'm glad I stayed and stuck it out. So yeah, it's so important to me. And the second thing that I did was ketamine therapy, which I did it at went 2 places. One place in Austin called Kuya, Kuya, and then there's one in Manhattan called Nushama, Nushama. And the way that ketamine therapy works is it's a chemical that changes the neuroplasticity of your brain.
Yes. How does the dose differ? I think my first exposure to ketamine when I was living in London, and the girls were going down to Fabric and the nightclubs.
Oh,
it was
God.
Like,
yeah.
Let's all take ketamine, and people would drop into a K-hole. I did not participate, but I know I was introduced to ketamine as a party drug.
Sure.
I know it's used in therapy now. How is the dosage different? Is it like a microdose of ketamine?
No, if anything, it's the opposite. I mean, look, I think
okay.
that the stigma of ketamine, I do not believe in doing ketamine recreationally. I think what we saw with like Matthew Perry and everyone's like, I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't be taking ketamine by yourself alone at home or it's a drug. It's a medical drug, right?
Yes.
And it's not designed for recreation. It's designed, if used, efficaciously, it's designed to change your life and your brain and heal you from depression. But the way that ketamine works is it changes the neuroplasticity in your brain. So essentially, in my case, I struggled with really debilitating anxiety. Some people do it for depression. Some people do it for OCD and rumination. It's been profound in people with eating disorders because of the obsessive thinking of thought. And it's also been profound with people who struggle with addiction, so alcoholism in particular. What it does is it basically creates a new neural pathway. So when your body starts to go into the instant trigger of, like in my case, anxiety, there's a new neural pathway through my ketamine treatment that's been created that it's like my anxiety pivots to a new part of my brain. So
Interesting.
the way that I can describe it, where I really recognized that it helped the most, was I used to have this like irrational fear of being on highways, which meant when I came out to LA, it took me forever to get
Yeah, I was
anywhere.
going to say, oof, talk about your stomach dropping and your heart rate increasing. Driving is this is a hot button topic for me.
Hot button topic, I know.
I truly feel like I'm going to die every time I'm behind the wheel of a car.
Yes.
So I need to take ketamine. Is that what's going to make me be a driver?
It probably would, to be honest.
Okay, listen, I'm going to look it up after this.
I mean, my anxiety manifested itself in driving. It was a product of so many different things. But where I noticed ketamine therapy helped me the most is that after I did my treatments, my anxiety before is I would get onto the ramp to go up to the highway, and I literally would be like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm like freaking out. And I'll never forget, I had done my first sessions of ketamine, and I was driving out east, and I got onto the highway, and I was like 4 or 5 minutes onto the highway, and I was like, oh my God. And I started like crying.
Wow.
Because I was like, I'm fine.
Right.
I didn't even realize that I was like calm on the highway. And it literally makes me emotional now. Like I just was like, I felt liberated. Like I really did. I was like, oh my God, like, wow, I can have this normal life experience and be okay.
What made you think, okay, ketamine is something I want to explore? Because a lot of people that experience anxiety, is it Xanax that you take for anxiety, or?
I mean, so many different things.
There's like, but like that class of like anti-anxiety medication.
Yeah.
I would imagine that a lot of people are like, I'll just take anti-anxiety medication and that will be the thing that like helps me manage it. What made you think I want to go a step beyond that and explore ketamine therapy? Because it is still kind of like a more alternative, newer approach.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be super honest. A friend of mine was like, you need to do ketamine therapy. He was like, whoa, you have gotten like, he was like just super honest. He had done it himself, and I was having lunch with him in Austin, and he was just like, I think this would help you.
Yeah.
It's also just like another way to think about it is like a super high dose of like an SSRI, which is like a Prozac, Lexapro.
Okay.
And I had tried antidepressants in the past, and they just didn't really work for me. I'm just not, my body just didn't respond well to them. I had like hot flashes, and it just wasn't for me. So this was an alternative attempt, and it worked. Yeah. And I think, I say that like, do it. These places are like, these are legal experiences, right? Like you're going to a doctor's office. It is not a, like,
right. No, I know.
Burning Man. I've never been to Burning Man, but I don't know. That's what I think people associate.
It's like deep in, like he's done like ayahuasca ceremonies, and my worst nightmare to do an ayahuasca ceremony. But like, love that for you.
But that maybe means you should consider it.
Yeah. See, I think when people talk about like I did something and I came out a totally different person, do you know what I always think? I think I like the person I am now.
Yes.
I don't know if I want to be a totally different person.
I think and
I don't know what that means, that I don't want to be a totally different person.
That's a great point. And I think the way that I would rephrase that is that it's not that you're a totally different person, but you're almost like the more actualized
version of yourself. Yes, which I do love and do want.
Yeah, like I'm like, my life is so much better not worrying about dumb shit.
I know.
Like my days were spent, and I obviously have also done the work to understand that like dumb shit was distracting me from the other realities that I had, which was like, I did not want to be in my business. What would that mean to close it? All the fears, anxieties around that, and societal expectations. I have, my mother and I am very public about this, like a very complicated, estranged relationship with my mom. I'm not uncomfortable anymore talking about it, but I was like hiding that for years and like really didn't want people to know, and worried about what it would look like for me to acknowledge that like my mom and I don't have a relationship.
Sharing that you don't have a relationship, what did it feel like to hear from people? Because there's so many people that don't have a relationship with their mother. And and you're right, it's not talked about often. Yeah. And when people hear it, I would imagine there's this sense of like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a world right now of like people going no contact, and it's like super trendy, and like Oprah did an episode on it, and I'm like, okay, it's a whole thing. But there's like, and look, everyone has their own life experience, and I'm not here to say that anyone's going no contact with their parents isn't valid. But there is a whole other group of people like myself who do not have relationships with a parent for like safety reasons, for emotional safety reasons. And so it's sometimes hard when I hear like people are like, my parent, like I didn't, my parent invited me to go on vacation with them and I'm not talking to them anymore. And I'm like, wow, that would actually be, I wish that was like the alternative that I had. But I think there's something to be said about when I acknowledge that and I say out loud, like, it's not an emotionally safe experience for me to have a relationship with my mother. Like, I love her and she knows I love her. And when I tell people love is not in question, there are a lot of people who would go like this, but there are also a lot of people who are like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really, it's very hard for people to grasp. You can love somebody so much, but the safest thing for you to do is have that relationship at a distance. And I think it's a brave and courageous thing. Yes. And it's something that I have no shame with anymore. And it's something that I hope, even anyone listening to this, like, if estrangement is done from a place of self-love and also love for the other person, then it is the best decision.
Yes. Yes. And you're so brave to speak about that. You are someone that I feel like, just when I imagine like a day in the life of Madison Utendahl, I feel like you do everything right. Like, I see you running. I see you with like the perfect wardrobe. I just feel like you've got it all figured out. How do you design your days? Like, I really want to know.
Do not have, this is how I will reframe that. Some days I'm like, I'm amazing. Some days I'm like, woo, child. I'm like, I don't know what's going on with her today. And I accept that.
Yeah.
All those days are me.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, yeah, some days I'm like, some days I have it together. And some days I don't.
But you are very together overall. How do you make time? Like, you and your running, how do you make time for that?
Look, the hardest, one of the biggest battles of my life is the battle at night when I'm like, you deserve to watch that next episode of Real Housewives. Or you could get 8 hours of sleep.
Right.
And it's like me against myself like this.
I know.
Literally.
But also, what's it called? Revenge bedtime?
Yes.
There have been all these studies that like the more burnt out you are at work, the less time you have for yourself day to day, like the later you stay up, because you're like making up.
I deserve this.
I work for everyone. And for moms, wait till you become a mom, because you're like, every waking hour is in dedication to someone else.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I know I should be sleeping, but I'm going to watch this show.
So the way that I look at my routine is acceptance that I'm not going to do all the things I would like to do.
Okay, love that.
I start my day every day and I'm like, you're doing the best you can with what you have. That's just like what I tell myself.
I always tell myself that.
Always.
I always say you're doing the best that you can in this current moment.
Totally.
Yes.
Yep. Every single day. And the other thing I tell myself every day, really, like truly, is I say, something wonderful will happen to me today. And the other one that I'll say is, my name is Madison Tate Utendahl, and great things happen to me and in my favor.
Yes.
And I believe that.
Yes.
And some days I get to meditate. Some days I get to run. Some days I get to journal. Some days I get to stand on my vibration plate, which is not a trend, everybody. That shit feels great.
Wait, which vibration plate do you have?
Life Pro, like the old school one that's like $175.
I kind of thought this was like a whole scam, but like,
no. Oh,
what does it do for you?
God.
Let's get into the vibration plate.
So I feel Yeah, I should though.
You should. We need to know.
So I say all this because I alternate between
different,
accepting that I can do one or two of these things every day,
right.
And on the weekends, because I'm childless, I don't have any kids. I know this will change when I have children. On the weekends, my husband and I, our routine, we do the whole thing. Saturday and Sunday, we do all the things. We let ourselves meditate, vibration plate, workout, the whole thing.
Dream.
Oh, that's why I'm like, there's no part of me that isn't aware that in a matter of a couple years, that won't be the case. So I'm trying to enjoy it as best as I can right now.
Yes.
And then during the week, I give myself permission to do one of the things every day. The vibration plate, which I don't get to do every day, but on the days I choose to do it, I stand for 15 minutes on it. And sometimes I play like a meditation music in the background. Sometimes I stand there in complete silence and just look out the window.
You don't like scroll your emails on it?
No, I choose not to. My husband oftentimes is answering emails when he's standing.
That's what I would be doing.
it like wakes up your entire body.
Ooh.
It's like it's truly as if you were like it shakes your system, your lymphatic. I mean, you got to use if someone's suffering constipation, I'm like get a vibration plate because it just you're moving everything around.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna link to your specific vibration plate in the show notes.
It is not fancy. Do not. There's these like
I was gonna say
because
you said 175, and I was like that's accessible.
It is Life Pro Shop or something like that. It's like one of the ones that has been around forever. That like it's not expensive
from the 80s.
There's all of these like people see a trend and these brands come out with it, and all of a sudden I'm sure you can buy like $1,000 vibration plate, but you don't need that. You don't just like everything. There is any sort of Western adoption of an Eastern modality, not vibration plates, but like most things. Yeah. People like pay $20 a month for a meditation app. Great. Right. You can meditate for free.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there's most likely a Eastern interpretation of a Western modality that we have adopted and added a price tag to.
Absolutely.
So the barrier of entry to a lot of things for wellness, in my opinion, is the willingness to actually go back to the ancient origin of what it was and allowing yourself to practice and participate in that.
Yes.
And not have to put pressure on yourself to financially adopt the modern 2026 Western interpretation of it, which is going to be an expensive thing.
That is so huge. Are there other things that you've integrated into your routine that have helped a lot? For me, one is magnesium powder. Yes. I love it. It's Wooden Spoon Herbs is the brand. Cool. And it's just been like a simple glass of magnesium powder at night. It's just like a game changer. Are there other kind of small things that you've done that just make you feel so much better?
Yes, and it could all be placebo effect, but I don't care. I'm taking it anyways.
The placebo effect is real if you feel it.
100%.
Do you know what I mean?
100%. There is a supplement called And Focus.
Oh my
friend
gosh.
Jamie makes. Yes.
She came on this podcast. Yes. She talked about it. She was like, this is like Adderall, but like natural Adderall.
Girl.
And I was very skeptical. I was like, I feel like
No. I was skeptical too. She sent it to me and it sat on my desk for 6 months.
It sat on my desk until I interviewed her, and then she talked about it. I took it the next day. The way I was locked in.
Me too. I was like,
I was like, what is in this? But it's just L-theanine, whatever's in it.
It's amazing.
Jamie, you did your big one.
No, totally. Yeah. And I love that we had the same thing. Like I was like, what is this? I'm not taking skeptical. This thing. And then one day, for some random reason on a Sunday, actually, I locked in. It was amazing. I also take this thing called Calm Aid, which is lavender, but in a capsule form.
Ooh.
Do not buy it on Amazon. Buy it from iHerb or an actual retail.
Yes.
Don't buy.
Well, I'll link to the right one again in the show notes. People ask me, where do I get? I'm like, my show notes are.
Everything's in the show notes.
Everything's in the
show notes. So those are two things to do. I sleep with it's called Manta eye mask. It's an eye mask. It's like satin, but it has cups.
Oh, I've seen those. I saw someone with that on my flight the other day.
Girl.
Do I need this?
Oh, sponsor me, Manta. No, my husband and I, if you walk into our room at night, we both have Manta earplugs. Both have the Manta eye masks, and then I've got like a silk bonnet that matches. They'd be like, "What the heck is going on here?"
You're just missing the mouth tape for
literally.
Like a fully mummified.
I tried mouth tape, but I have sinus issues, and so I would just like wake up feeling like couldn't
suffocating.
Yeah, literally. So I do that. I also I'm a really big believer in an Epsom salt bath.
Love.
People feel uncomfortable with this, but you take a bath with the lights off. I know that seems a little weird.
Why do people feel uncomfortable about that?
I think they just feel weird about it, but like take a bath with the lights off and just natural light, like a candle.
Yes, love.
And it's really decompresses.
I do that with showers.
Yes.
I put on candles and I take a shower.
Yes,
dark shower.
So it literally calms your entire body and nervous system. And then the other thing that I do is I have an alarm clock, an old school alarm clock by Lofty or whatever that brand is. And I sleep with my phone in the kitchen.
Okay.
And a lot of people I had someone say to me, well, what if someone you love dies in the middle of the night? And I was at a dinner.
That's also just such an extreme,
so extreme. But then this guy at the dinner, I don't even remember who he was. He was like, is it going to be any worse if you learned that they died in the morning?
I kind of agree with that.
Okay. I was like, you know what? No, he's exactly right. He was totally right. I don't know who he is. If you're listening, thank you. You changed my life. And
I ordered a brick because of you.
Yes.
It hasn't arrived yet, but I'm ready for my life to be changed. Talk to me about brick.
Well, I don't want to. I don't know because they don't sponsor me.
Okay, listen, guys.
No one sponsors me, but I've given them so much business. I'm like, who's on your marketing team? The fact that no one on their marketing team has reached out to me, I'm like,
brick. It's Madison. We're listening to
No,
Madison.
literally,
We're
I've sent
buying.
you so
We're
much
buying.
business,
We're
and
buying the
whoever's on
products.
your marketing team, like from one marketing to person to another. Come on,
Yes.
let's come.
Yes. But the time we waste scrolling on these apps.
Yeah, and the shame we put. I don't have self
Control.
control
Exactly.
when it comes to my phone. When actually, it's interesting. When it comes to social media, I'm not like I don't. I deleted all of my shopping apps on my phone
Oh yeah.
like a year and a half ago. Like I don't have Net-a-Porter, I don't have anything on my phone, Essence, none of that stuff on my phone anymore. And like it's fine. I'm not out here like, but Instagram.
Oh, I know. Have you
So
seen that meme that's like, it's like someone lying on the floor and it's like, I opened it, and they're like choking and it's like, I was supposed to call 911, but somehow I'm on wheels. And the person's like dying next. But it's like you open your phone
no,
and you're like, why am I looking at real? What did I come here for and
no,
why am I here?
literally. No, literally. I have bricks everywhere. I have them in my car, kitchen, in my purse. I probably have
And what
them in
does
my
it do? It just
purse.
blocks the.
Yeah, so it's a magnet, and you change the settings, and you can set certain settings. So I have a focus setting, a no social setting, a drive setting, a sleep setting. If I'm traveling, because I can't put my phone in another room. If I guess you could put it in a hotel bathroom, but normally the only time my phone's in my bedroom is when I'm traveling. And it's a magnet, and you tap your phone on, you click the setting you want, and you tap your phone on the magnet, and it blocks those accounts.
Yeah.
And why it's amazing is that in particular, if I'm going out to dinner with a friend, I will brick my phone before I leave my house.
Yeah.
So that I'm like not engaging on social media when I'm at dinner with my friend. Like I did that last night before I had dinner with you, is I bricked my phone so that I can be present and engaged, because there's no email that I'm like, on a rare occasion, an email is going to captivate me that much where I like cannot pay attention
Yeah.
to the dinner, but it usually is because it's like a work emergency, not like some brand being like, hey, can we
Yeah.
send you this purse? I'm like, I can definitely get back to them tomorrow. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And it's just freed myself of any sort of shame
Yes.
around
Being
self-control,
unable
with
to control
Instagram.
yourself.
Like I'm
Yeah.
like, these things are designed to keep us addicted. Like this is, and look at the lawsuit that was just lost. Like it's not a self-control issue. It is not a boundaries issue. It is not a, people who think they're holier than thou because they're not on Instagram. I'm like, kiss my ass. I'm like, you're not better than anybody because you're not on social media. Do you know what I mean? Like this
Right.
is a product of life.
Yes.
And I don't believe in shaming culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the way that we shame people because of control or self-control is like a really insidious force. And I'm not willing to
Absolutely.
participate in that. And I'm also not willing to do that to myself. So I'm bricking this shit. I'm like, brick.
I can't wait for mine to arrive. Are you good about bedtime?
It's kind of hard for me to wind down.
Yeah.
So
What time do you wake up?
depends on the day. To everyone's surprise, because I am somebody who can be very disciplined, I don't have consistency in what time I wake up or what time I go to bed.
Okay. Love to hear that. I feel less alone.
Yeah, I'm like people like I go to bed every time. I'm like, no, it depends. Like if I'm at dinner with my friends,
Yeah.
I don't have a bedtime.
Yeah.
I love to kiki at
Yeah,
a
of
dinner. So
course.
I'm like, I'll go to bed when I go to bed.
Yes.
If it's a casual night at home, sometimes my husband and I like, sometimes we make dinner at 6, sometimes we make dinner at 8.
Yeah.
Like it really depends. But we always, depending on when we eat, it depends on what the evening looks like, right?
Mhm.
So like we won't watch the show after dinner if we eat late.
Yeah.
But I like to read before I go to sleep. That's one of the only things that really except there's a couple, I just read Strangers by Belle Burton. That shit kept me
Yes.
up. I could not read that book at night.
Oh my gosh. I'm excited. I have it and I'm excited to dive in.
Ugh,
I could talk to you all day forever and ever,
I know.
but we have to conclude yet another amazing episode of
I know, I
Naked
can't
Beauty
wait for
featuring
my
Madison.
I
know.
Time. What's gonna be my next?
Well, I'm so excited to see the way Burnt evolves and
Yes.
grows as you
Yeah.
do more video content. And
Yeah, I guess I'll talk about that. So the next chapter for me, on top of being a CMO, is I am going to be launching a show based on my Substack Burnt,
Amazing.
which I'm very excited about, and it's unpacking the systems of work and how we got here and what we can do to change them. Like, is HR a scam? Kind of.
A little bit.
I mean, that's like,
Shout out to all the HR people listening. We
yeah, I
love
love
you.
HR people. Not really, but I'm going to pretend I do. I historically have never gotten along with anyone in HR, and it's kind of why I did this episode. But what I'm really excited about this show is it is taking the early part of my career when I was an on-camera host at Refinery, all the investigative journalism from Last Week Tonight. And when we talked, talking about fulfillment, this is one example of that, like starting new and closing my company. I have never been happier and closer to my dreams than I am now. It's been 10 years.
I'm
And
so
that
happy
is
for
really
you.
cool. And that's only possible because I had the willingness to like close something and start over.
Yes.
And it's so worth it. It's hard and it's an ongoing, it's a journey. And I don't want anyone at home to think that it came easy. But as I sit here in my early 30s, humbled and starting over again, experiencing what it means like to be an amateur again, I wouldn't trade it for anything else.
Yeah.
And that's
So
so cool.
it's amazing. I'm so, so happy for you. You know the final question because you've been on the show before. When do you feel most beautiful?
When do I feel most beautiful? That's a great. Is that the last that's a question you always ask?
Yeah. Yes. The 350 plus episodes in.
I will say the other day I had this feeling. I caught my husband just like looking at me,
Shout
and
out to Lex.
I just had this feeling. I was like, wow, like how lucky am I? Like I feel beautiful always, but it's a really beautiful feeling to know that the person that you're with, no matter, I mean, I looked a mess too. And he was like, I could just see how much he felt I was beautiful, just the way he was looking at me. And I was like, I feel so grateful that I get to experience that and love. It's a really beautiful thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
But me first, obviously.
yes, yes. We are Leos at the end of the day. Thank you so much, Madison. It's been
Thank
so
you for
great
having
catching
me.
up.
Yeah, episode 4.
Yes. Yay. Amazing.